The night air was thick with fog as Officer Lila Jensen pulled her cruiser into the abandoned neighborhood on the outskirts of town. The once bustling community had been deserted for years, swallowed by rumors of strange occurrences and unexplainable disappearances. Now, it lay silent under a pall of moonlight, the outlines of decaying houses looming like specters. "Dispatch, I'm at the old Miller estate," she said, her voice steady despite the chill creeping down her spine. "No signs of forced entry, but I'll check it out." "Copy that, Lila. Just be careful. We've had a couple of calls from nearby residents about strange noises." "Roger that." Stepping out of the car, Lila felt a shiver as the wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it a faint whispering that seemed to come from nowhere. She shook her head, trying to dispel the unease. With her flashlight cutting through the fog, she approached the front door, its paint peeling and wood warped. It creaked open with a gentle push, revealing a darkened hallway that reeked of mildew and decay. "Hello, is anyone here?" her voice echoed, but no response followed, only the soft rustle of the wind outside. She entered cautiously, flashlight beam scanning the peeling wallpaper and shattered furniture. As she moved deeper into the house, she noticed strange markings on the walls, words scratched into the plaster, some unreadable, others spelling out "leave and they see you." A feeling of dread coiled in her stomach. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to keep moving. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the upstairs, echoing like a death knell through the empty halls. Lila's heart raced. "Dispatch, I heard something upstairs." "I'm going in. Be advised, Lila. We've had reports of..." But she cut off the radio, the static buzzing in her ears, and ascended the stairs, each step creaking ominously underfoot. The second floor was darker, the air heavier, as if it were pressing down on her. The whispers returned, clearer now, sounding like urgent murmurs. She reached the door to a room at the end of the hall. "Hello." She called again, but the whispers only intensified, swirling around her like a storm. Gathering her courage, she pushed the door open. Inside, the moonlight streamed through a cracked window, illuminating a child's room frozen in time. Toys lay scattered across the floor, and a bed was neatly made, as if waiting for its occupant to return. Lila felt a pang of sadness but dismissed it, focusing instead on a figure standing in the corner, half hidden in shadow. "Who's there?" she demanded, raising her flashlight. The beam landed on a small girl, her face pale and eyes wide, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Help me," the girl whispered, voice trembling. "They won't let me go." Lila's heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "Who won't let you go?" But as she stepped closer, the girl vanished, leaving only the chill of her presence. Confused and frightened, Lila stumbled back, bumping into a dresser. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, wrapping around her like a shroud. Suddenly, her radio crackled to life. "Lila, Lila, are you there?" "Why yes, I'm here," she replied, voice shaky. "Get out of there. We're getting reports of movement in the area. You need to." The radio cut off, static filling the air. Panic surged within her. The shadows in the room began to shift, contorting into vague shapes that loomed closer. She turned to run, but found the door had slammed shut, trapping her inside. The whispers escalated into a cacophony, drowning out her thoughts. "Leave, leave," they screamed, echoing off the walls as the shadows closed in, their forms twisting and stretching, indistinguishable and grotesque. With a surge of adrenaline, Lila grabbed the window latch, flinging it open and climbing through. The air outside was sharp and cold, and she landed on the overgrown grass below with a thud. She scrambled to her feet and sprinted to her car, the whispers fading, but their chill still gripping her heart. She fumbled with her keys, glancing back at the house, its silhouette dark and ominous against the moonlight. The windows seemed to watch her as she finally got the engine roaring to life. As she sped away, she could still hear the faint echoes of those desperate whispers lingering in the night. When Lila returned to the station, shaken but determined to report what she had seen, the chief met her at the door. "What happened out there?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Something's wrong with that house," she began, but as she looked around, she noticed a group of officers gathered, their expressions grim. "Lila, we just received a call," the chief continued, his voice low. "2 more kids have gone missing in the area." Her blood ran cold as she realized the whispers would not be silenced, and she knew, deep down, that the shadows were only just beginning to stir. Officer Mark Thompson had seen a lot during his 10 years on the force, but the old Hawthorne estate always unnerved him. It had been abandoned for over a decade, swallowed by stories of eerie sounds and strange sightings. Tonight, though, he was on patrol, and the call came through. Unusual noises reported near the estate. As he pulled up, the night was suffocated by fog, swallowing the flickering streetlights and casting a ghostly pall over the cracked facade of the house. It loomed, an ancient relic, its windows dark and empty. Mark stepped out of his cruiser, the air thick with an unsettling stillness. "Dispatch, I'm at the Hawthorne estate." "No visible signs of trouble," he said, the radio crackling back in response. "Stay safe out there, Thompson. We've had reports of kids messing around near that place." "Copy that." He made his way toward the front door, which hung slightly ajar, creaking ominously as he pushed it open. Inside, the smell of damp wood and decay hit him like a wall. Dust motes danced in his flashlight beam, illuminating a scene frozen in time, old furniture covered in sheets, walls adorned with peeling wallpaper. As he moved through the house, every step echoed through the empty halls, the silence pressing in around him. He stopped to inspect a nearby room, noticing old photographs on the wall, smiling faces that seemed to stare back at him. Something felt off, a prickling sensation crawling up his spine. "Anyone here?" he called out, his voice echoing eerily. No response, just the whisper of the wind outside. Then, he heard a faint giggle, the kind that belonged to children. His heart raced. "Dispatch, I think I'm hearing something." "I'll check it out." As he climbed the stairs, the sound grew clearer, a playful laughter echoing down the hallway. He reached the second floor, the air colder, heavier. The laughter faded, replaced by a low hum. "Hello, is anyone there?" he called, but only the hum responded. It was coming from the last room at the end of the hall. Taking a deep breath, he approached the door, its surface warped and splintered. He pushed it open. The room was empty, save for a single rocking chair that swayed gently, as if recently vacated. His skin prickled. There was something unsettling about it. A chill swept through him, and he felt the urge to leave. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he caught movement, small figures darting through the shadows. Mark's heart pounded. "Kids, is that you?" he called, trying to sound authoritative but failing to mask the tremor in his voice. The laughter returned, louder now, echoing from the hallway. It was disjointed, twisting, as if mocking him. Mark turned on his flashlight, illuminating the hallway, but there was nothing there, only the shadows clinging to the walls. "Dispatch, I need backup. I think there are kids in here," he reported, but the radio was silent, static buzzing in his ears. As he stepped back into the hallway, the laughter crescendoed, turning into something sinister, a cacophony of whispers that seemed to swirl around him. "Leave. Help us. They're here." Fear coiled in his gut. He spun around, aiming his flashlight at the staircase, but the shadows seemed to swallow the light, darkening further. He could feel them watching, waiting. "Get a grip, Mark," he muttered, forcing himself to move. He turned back towards the stairs, but before he could take a step, the door slammed shut behind him with a resounding bang. The sound reverberated through the house, freezing him in place. "Dispatch, can anyone hear me?" he shouted, panic rising in his chest. The only answer was the relentless whispers that filled the air, overwhelming and suffocating. He rushed to the door, rattling the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers grew louder, forming a chant that filled his mind. "Help us, help us, help us." Desperate, he backed away and took a running start, slamming into the door with his shoulder. It held firm, his breath quickened, each heartbeat thundering in his ears as he turned back to the room. "Stay away," he shouted, the words escaping before he could think. But the shadows responded, flickering like flames, coalescing into dark figures at the edge of his vision. He felt their cold breath against his skin, a tangible dread wrapping around him. Then, just as quickly as it began, silence fell. The whispers receded, leaving an eerie stillness. Mark held his breath, straining to listen. Had they gone? In that moment of quiet, he heard a soft voice, fragile and trembling. "Help us, please." He turned slowly, heart pounding, and saw a girl standing in the corner, her eyes wide with fear. "Please, help us," she cried, reaching out. "Where are your parents?" he asked, the words slipping from his mouth. She pointed to the darkness beyond the room, and he felt an inexplicable urge to follow. But something deep inside warned him. "No, don't go near her," he shouted, but the shadows surged forward, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. Mark stumbled back, eyes wide, but the figures swarmed, their cold fingers grasping at him. In a final act of desperation, he turned and charged at the door again, throwing his weight against it. This time, it gave way. He crashed into the hallway, breathless and panicked, darting for the stairs. The shadows roared behind him, and he could hear the girl's voice, softer now, fading into the void. "Help us!" He burst through the front door, stumbling into the cool night air. The fog wrapped around him, thick and disorienting, but he didn't stop running. He reached his cruiser, fumbled with the keys, and jumped inside, slamming the door shut as if it would keep the darkness at bay. "Dispatch, this is Officer Thompson. I need backup at the Hawthorne estate now." Silence fell again, the only sound his ragged breathing. As he glanced back at the house, he saw the figures gathered at the windows, dark and still. Mark drove away, the whispers trailing behind him, echoing in his mind. He didn't look back, but he knew they were still there, waiting for someone else to hear their cries. The house had its secrets, and they were not ready to let go. Officer Sarah Mitchell parked her cruiser at the edge of the derelict Crescent Street, where the flickering streetlight barely illuminated the crumbling sidewalks. The old Johnson house loomed ahead, its windows dark and its paint peeling, a relic of a time long past. Rumors had swirled for years about strange happenings in the neighborhood, and tonight, an anonymous call had brought her here. "Dispatch, I'm on scene at 214 Crescent. No signs of forced entry." "I'll investigate," she said, her voice steady despite the apprehension knotting in her stomach. "Copy that, Officer Mitchell. Be careful. We've had reports of strange noises coming from that area." "I'll keep my eyes open," she replied, stepping out of the car. The air was heavy with humidity, thickening the silence that enveloped the house. As she approached the front door, a gust of wind rattled the loose shutters, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. Pushing the door open, it creaked ominously, revealing a dark foyer that seemed to swallow the light from her flashlight. Dust danced in the beam, and the musty smell of decay hit her like a wave. She called out again, "Hello, is anyone here?" Nothing but silence answered her, but as she moved deeper into the house, she thought she heard the faint sound of a child's laughter. It sent a chill through her. The house was rumored to be haunted by the spirit of a girl who had gone missing years ago. Shaking off the thought, she pressed on. The living room was cluttered with old furniture, covered in sheets that looked like ghosts in the dark. Her flashlight beam caught something on the floor, a small, worn-out toy. She picked it up, a ragged teddy bear with one button eye, and felt an unsettling weight in her chest. "Dispatch, I found a toy in the Johnson house." "I'm going to check upstairs," she said, forcing her voice to remain calm. "Be cautious, Sarah. We're still receiving odd reports from the area." "Understood." She climbed the staircase, each step creaking under her weight. As she reached the landing, the laughter returned, louder this time, echoing through the dark hallways. It felt wrong, distorted, as if mocking her. "Hello, is anyone there?" she called again, her voice strained. The laughter faded, replaced by a low, ominous whisper. She felt her heart race, and a sense of dread washed over her. She stepped toward the first bedroom, its door slightly ajar. Pushing it open, she found a child's room, eerily preserved. The bed was made, and the walls were decorated with faded drawings. But the air felt thick, almost suffocating. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw movement, a small figure darting across the hallway. "Hey, stop," she shouted, chasing after it. The figure vanished into another room, and she followed, adrenaline surging. "Where are you?" she yelled, panic rising in her throat. But as she entered the next room, it was empty, the only sound her heavy breathing. She turned to leave when she heard it, a soft voice, barely a whisper. "Help me." Her heart dropped. "Who's there?" she asked, trying to sound authoritative. "I'm a police officer. Are you hurt?" The voice echoed again, more insistent. "Help me." Without thinking, she rushed toward the sound, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. But as she neared the hallway, the air grew colder, and she felt a heavy presence pressing down on her. Suddenly, the door behind her slammed shut. Sarah spun around, panic flooding her senses. What the hell? She pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers intensified, swirling around her, drowning out her thoughts. Help us, help us. Her breathing quickened as the shadows thickened, morphing into indistinct shapes. She felt trapped, the walls closing in. Desperate, she turned back to the hallway, but it was gone completely dark, a void where the entrance had been. Dispatch, I need backup, I'm trapped. She yelled, but static filled the air, and her radio crackled with interference. In the darkness, the soft voice returned, now filled with urgency. You have to help us, they won't let us go. Sarah's heart raced. Who won't let you go? She demanded, fear gripping her. A small figure appeared at the end of the hall, just out of reach. It was a little girl, her face pale and eyes wide with terror. They're coming, she cried, pointing back into the darkness. Who's coming? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. But the girl didn't answer. Instead, she turned and dashed down the hallway, disappearing into the shadows. Without thinking, Sarah followed, fueled by a mix of dread and determination. The girl led her to a small closet at the end of the hall. The whispers crescendoed, filling the space with an urgent plea. Please, help us. Sarah reached for the door handle, but as she touched it, the air crackled with a sharp energy. The whispers morphed into a deafening roar, and she stumbled back, disoriented. Then, from the depths of the shadows, dark figures began to emerge, twisted, anguished faces filled with rage. Sarah felt a cold grip on her heart, a paralyzing fear. Get away from her, she shouted, backing away. The figures closed in, their whispers turning into a cacophony of despair. Desperate, Sarah turned to run, racing back down the hallway. She charged through the first door she found, slamming it behind her. It was a small bathroom, and she pressed her back against the door, breathless and terrified. The whispers intensified, clawing at her sanity. Let us go, help us. She could feel the presence of the figures outside, pressing against the door, and she knew she had to escape. With trembling hands, she grabbed her radio again. Dispatch, I need help now. I'm trapped in the Johnson house, but the static buzzed in her ears, a cruel reminder of her isolation. Heart pounding, she searched the bathroom for a window, her mind racing. She finally spotted one, slightly ajar, and with a surge of adrenaline, she climbed up to reach it. As she pushed it open, she heard the door behind her slam with an earth-shattering force. The whispers transformed into anguished wails, echoing through the small space. Help us, you have to help us. She didn't look back. With one last burst of strength, she squeezed through the window and landed in the overgrown yard outside, gasping for air. The cold night enveloped her, but she didn't stop. She sprinted to her cruiser, fumbled with the keys, and leapt inside. As she drove away, she glanced in the rearview mirror. The house stood silent, the darkness swallowing it whole. The echoes of the whispers lingered in her mind, haunting her thoughts. Dispatch, I'm leaving the scene. I need backup out here now, she said, her voice shaking. Roger that, Officer Mitchell. What's your location? But as she drove further away, she realized that she would never escape the cries of those lost within the shadows of the Johnson house. The darkness would always be there, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to hear their plea. Alright everyone, that brings us to the end of our story. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And if you have similar stories you'd like to share with us, feel free to reach out. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.